Speaker, point of personal privilege.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen in the House, last week we heard from the gentleman from Augusta about the Republican agenda on education this session. We heard a lot about school choice, about charter schools, about SOLs, and general reform. Ladies and gentlemen, some of these initiatives are bipartisan and some are not. What we heard very little about, however, was the financial support needed for the schools, for their teachers, for our students, and for our divisions which face critical financial and educational challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, we can talk a lot about school choice and charters, but let us recognize that under some of these proposals, we are either removing money from public schools or taking away local control of how that money is spent. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, with all of the discussion about reform, and some of it is very, very productive, let's not lose track of the fact that it is the budget which signals our intentions. We can talk a good game about reform, but we need to back up our efforts with real dollars. Our governor has put $850 million in new money in his proposed budget. And as we consider various proposals he's made, I hope that you will remember the following. Number one, the Commonwealth now has over 1.2 million students statewide, and this number continues to grow each year. Number two, increasing numbers in our system are students from families with incomes that qualify them for free or reduced lunch, or our ESOL students, or our students with special challenges. These students require special interventions, and all of the discussion about choice only marginally would solve their problems. Education Week's Quality Counts, a publication they do each year, recently reported that Virginia is the 5th worst state among the states in its size of its poverty gap. That is, the gap between those who qualify for free and reduced lunch and those who don't. Number three, we have been underinvesting in K-12 education since the Great Recession of 2007 and 8. In actual dollars, state funding per pupil is actually lower than it was at that time. And if you adjust for inflation, the spending has actually decreased since that time. Last year, we increased funding a little bit, but we still have not caught up with the actual or inflation-adjusted funding from 2008 and 2009. And total funding, that is funding from both state and local monies, has not done much better. Fourth, Mr. Speaker, we talk a lot about unfunded mandates and local impacts of bills that we pass here. But our failure to provide adequate state funding for education has been affecting our local communities and our local school divisions. I earlier stated that data showed that per pupil spending in total has not actually dropped as much as state per pupil spending. Well, you might ask yourself, why? Mr. Speaker, the answer is that because wealthier communities have been able to step up and fill the gap with local funds that are not provided by the state, their per pupil spending has not decreased as much. In my communities of Charlottesville and Albemarle, that's been the case. But what about poorer communities? That's where the real hit has been happening over the last 8 years, and that's where we think we can make a big difference. Now, education is really important, and it really needs to be spread across all divisions. It's all about building that new Virginia economy and the recognition that our children and grandchildren no longer compete against other Virginians or even other Americans, but they compete globally, and they need to have those skills necessary to do so. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, the governor has put $850 million new dollars in this year's budget, and that money is not just to fund SOQs, about half of which is for that. It also gives teacher raises of 2% that will allow them perhaps catch up to their deficiency vis-a-vis their colleagues in other states. We now rank 88th. We are 88% in teacher pay compared to the colleagues in other states. There are monies to hire new teachers to replace about one-half of those people who were let go in the last 5 or 6 years. And the governor's budget also includes money to help disadvantaged, challenged schools. In summary, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, remember, our budgets make clear our intentions. So while we can talk about reform, we should not forget the investments. And this year, we have a chance to increase our investment in K-12 education, and I hope we will not miss that opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.